Hello everyone, welcome to chapter 207 of The Last Thoughts of a Busy Mind. This one titled Iran and Optics. This time we're going to talk about image and basically Iran's self-image, more importantly Iranians' self-image, and how that is also kind of more complex than you might think. My drink today is some Coke Zero, and let me open up the bottle here. So if I sound a little bit sick, I was at a wedding last night, and well, you yell in a wedding when you're dancing and all of that, and that has a consequence. Also, my body is shot, and this is pretty good Coke Zero. It's quite cold. But anyways, let's talk about Iran and optics and the issue of self-image. So, when you're thinking about it, I'm gonna kind of divide this into three sections, because when you're thinking about it, Iran and Iranians are often viewed through three very distinct sections or distinct views, distinct desires. One is the government, how the government wants Iran to be viewed. One is the diaspora, how diaspora wants Iran to be viewed. And one is the citizens, how citizens of Iran want to be viewed. And let's first get the easy one out of the way. Sorry if I sound incoherent. Talking is getting a little bit odd for me these days. Don't know why. Probably something to do with my deteriorating mental state, but we keep all that personal shit for when season 15 comes out. Anyways, let's get the easy one out of the way. How government wants Iran to be viewed? Well, it wants it to be viewed as a powerful force in the region. Like in the Middle East, Iran has to be a key player, and in order to be viewed that way, they want to project strength. That's why a lot of how Iranian officials talk about Iran is often through projection of strength, even if it's false strength. They often talk about, how great we were in overcoming adversarial forces, or how powerful we were, how our history was powerful. We'll talk about how we were always the underdog but always came out on top, and all of that. That is, for the most part, not true. It is not fully wrong. Iran has come away victorious in face of many, many adversaries, but it also hasn't been that successful when it comes to its view of the adversaries. You know what I mean? We have won a few wars, we have lost significant things in those wars. The Iran-Iraq war, for example, was a massive success in many terms, because Iran managed to hold on for 8 years against a force that was bigger, stronger, much more organized, and wasn't reeling from a traumatic internal upturned system. But at the same time, because of that war, it cemented the rule of the Islamic Republic as the de facto leader in Iran, and they managed to pass through a lot of things under the radar, under the guise of, we are in a war, and at the same time it gave birth to a lot of powerful forces that currently terrorize Iranians, like the Sepah, or we call them Sepah. I think. Sorry about that. My throat is a little bit of a problem. But yeah, it gave birth to all of them. So the view that the government wants to project is one of pure strength and pure adversarial relationship to what it claims to be Western powers. Now, by Western powers, it obviously means Europe and America, United States, Canada, North America. We do not have any sort of problem with other countries who are west of us, like Africa is west of Iran, and so is South America. So and Australia is eastern to us, but technically, it's part of the Western powers. Basically, Iranian government sees itself as the underdog in a battle against the Western powers. Now, some of that image is true. There is always a morsel of truth in all of the self-viewings that I'm going to discuss. There's always one morsel of truth. Yes, a lot of the problems that the Western countries have with Iran are ideological, and it is most of the time West versus East. And it goes back like thousands of years. But at the same time, it's just untrue. The Iranian leadership isn't as adversarial to the West as it projects to, because it does a lot of business in the West. Sepah does a lot of business in the West through shell companies and all of that, and they don't seem to mind. At the same time, West isn't that opposed to the Iranian elite because, they would like the money. So they are not as opposed, but they want to appear as opposed. So that's how they view themselves. Now, to the other end of it is the Iranian diaspora. Now, I've talked many times about the Iranian diaspora here, and what I'm talking about mostly are people who left Iran in 1979 and have created communities of Iranian outside of Iran whose idea of Iran are kind of cemented in 1979. They don't seem to have moved past that. And to them, Iran and Iranians have always been basically Americans, just, halfway across the world. The way they view Iran is basically an American colony. They think that the salvation of Iranians come from subservience to the America, and since their view of America is oftentimes aligned with the American right, they view the Iranian salvation as being subservient to the American right. Do anything, debase yourself and humiliate yourself for the chance that an American right-winger will look at you and say, okay, you can have one contract. And that's the view they have of Iran. And so to them, they come head-to-head with the government view, who wants to see itself as, directly opposing these forces, even though in reality, most of the fights aren't, ideological. I've said it before, I'll say it again, the best friend to an American right-winger is the Iranian government. When you get down to it, ideologically, they all want the same thing. It's for the Islamophobia of the American right that they don't see how good friends they can be with the Islamic Republic. They can just together destroy the LGBT rights, women's rights, and minority rights. They are good friends. It's sad that they don't see it. Anyways, sarcasm aside, diaspora sees the Iranian image as basically this American pet that needs to be America's pet in order to get what it needs or what it has to have. And both of these are kind of wrong and kind of right. It is true that America has become so big that any country who directly opposes it are facing, massive repercussions. And Iran isn't big enough, both geographically and power-wise, to stand in face of this massive adversary. So they are suffering massive losses, not just economic losses, which is, again, huge part of it, but they are just suffering from opportunity. And I've talked it in the last episode about what the isolation of Iran is meant for the Iranian people's mental health and how it feels to kind of always be rejected because of the fact that you're Iranian. But the idea that Iran should just bow and subserviently accept the king's bounty is also not correct, because there are lots of countries who do that. I mean, Keir Starmer basically is doing everything in his power to suck up to the America right now. And in the end, if you give them what they want, they will just not give you what you want. They will ask for more because you've given them what they want. It's basically negotiating with terrorists, but with a big terrorist. But it's funny because a mixture of these two is how Iranian citizen wants to be viewed. Most of the people inside of Iran, most of the younger people inside of Iran, oftentimes see themselves as, well, diaspora stuck in Iran. And that even goes for myself. The fact that I'm doing this show in English means that I see myself as not a citizen of Iran. I want to be viewed as someone with basically international appeal that is stuck in Iran. And that is more self-reflection than you probably would have given. I didn't think I would get this self-reflective, but yeah, that's also me. That's people like me, people who we engrave ourselves in Western culture. The fact that I know a lot about Hammer movies, that I know a lot about Western movies, that I know a lot about Western pop culture, even though I haven't been to a Western high school, I probably know about prom and all of that. It tells you of the hegemonizing force, and Iranians really want to be seen in that, because otherwise we need to be, well, either we need to be Iranian servants to the American interest, or the active adversary that the government and the diaspora of Iran wants to be seen as. And we don't want either. So what's left? We're just you know? There is no difference between us. And the fact is, there is. A lot of us are just fooling ourselves. The fact is that I will never probably be accepted as person of the West communities because I am born in Iran. I speak with an Iranian accent. I don't know how, I've been complimented that my accent doesn't sound Middle Eastern. And that, the fact that I call it a compliment, shows you how much I want that hegemonizing force. I want to be seen as not an Iranian. And that is the optics. That is the problem. That is the thing I want to talk about. That these three views of Iran have become kind of a mesh, On the one hand, you have Iran as this adversarial force. You have Iran as this submissive force. And you have Iranians who do not want to be Iranians. And when I see outside of Iran, usually the media, the official Western media, clings to the government's version. Iran is this massive threat. Usually when they want to demonize people of Middle East, Iran's government gives them enough ammo to do that. They will say, oh, look at the image they're projecting of themselves. They are these massive threats in the region, because the Iranian government wants to be seen as this massive threat in the region. It wants to have a force big enough to be recognized. When you look at how the Iranian diaspora media, the Iran Internationals, the VOA Persians, the late Manotos and all of that, it's often seen as, well, look how these adversarial things are hurting us, we should be submissive. They actively praise anti-Iranian legislation and anti-Iranian works because they see it as, justified. They basically are saying, this view of Iran is this submissive creature that needs to bow down to the Western powers, and the fact that it's not is wrong. That's the image they want to project. And when you get down to it, when you go to the social media and talk to Iranians, when I talk to the young people, when you see the massive waves of people just leaving Iran, most of them want one thing. They want to not be Iranians. Again, I understand that. I want to not be Iranian too. That's why I'm speaking in English. That's why I feel alienated in my own country And part of it is not without merit. Do not get me wrong. I will probably, either the next episode or the episode after that, talk a little bit about the Iranian culture and the shortcomings and some of the things that you are probably true, but they should be seen with a more nuanced view about the Iranian culture. It is restrictive. I do not feel like I can be myself in Iran. But at the same time, the image I want to project of myself is very, very much without identity. I want to be seen as, a person in Middle East, but not of Middle East. And again, these are the optics. As I said, when you look at how most of the West talks about Iran, the government view is oftentimes prominent. They see, they are doing this. Even sometimes they show images of the state propaganda network, because that's how Iranian government wants to be viewed. And if that's not that, if you look at the diaspora view, it's most of the times, prophetic. There is no other way of saying it. There is a fourth one, though, that I'm going to tack on, and that is the view people have of Iran as typical Middle Eastern country. This is not about Iran. This is about Middle East as a region. This is the view they have of Afghans. This is the view they have of Iraqis. This is the view they have of Syrians, of Saudis, of everyone in this region, and which is all, quote-unquote, oppressed people of the same cloth. That's the view that we didn't even want to project ourselves, but it's been projected. Truth is, Iranian people are much stronger than these whole cloth, oppressed people under ruthless government view wants us to be seen. Truth is that, but at the same time, we are not that powerful that the government wants to be seen as. Optics is kind of important in a lot of sense. It gives a lot of things power. One of the reasons I'm actually glad that optics have shifted is how a lot of people view Israel in Gaza. It's not Gaza, it's Gaza. I don't know why I keep pronouncing it with the English, right? In Gaza, it's that the optics have changed. It's no longer, we are doing this for self-defense. It's been seen as a massacre, as it should have been, for the last 50 fucking years. And that is actually kind of invigorating. Optics do matter. And the optics on Iran has changed a little bit, especially since 9/11. But at the same time, a lot of it is still there. A lot of the optics in Iran are still seeped deep into the horrifying events of 1980s, and for Americans, not for us. No, they don't care that our government killed a bunch of our own people. They just are worried of the time our government imprisoned a lot of their people. Sorry, didn't mean to be this catty, but I guess it happened. But yeah, that's the thing, Optics do matter. And how we view ourselves also matter, and how we present ourselves also matter. And I'm both glad that I've seen actual change in there, and at the same time, it's kind of sad that the most unifying thing about Iranians everywhere is how much we don't want to be seen as Iranians. Because optics are bad in Iran. Whether you live in Iran, whether you live outside of Iran, whether you align with the government, whether you align with the diaspora, optics aren't good. So, when all things fail, the best course of action is just don't admit you're Iranian. change your name to an Americanized version, and stop speaking Persian. See you next week.